Welcome to this explainer. Today we're deconstructing something absolutely incredible. We're breaking down a masterful dark fantasy cinematic sequence, the awakening of a creature so massive it literally defies comprehension. We're going to analyze exactly how the source text builds up this intense anticipation, impossible scale, and sheer visual wonder. Okay, let's dive into this. Because we're introduced to a beast so unimaginably colossal that, quote, entire forests grow upon its back and frozen waterfalls hang from its wings. Think about that for a second. We aren't just talking about a big monster here. Actually, scratch that. It's not an animal at all. We're talking about a living, breathing landscape. The source text immediately hooks us with this impossible scale, setting the stage for an awakening that's going to reshape the very Earth itself. Setting the frozen stage, a cold, oppressive atmosphere. So, to really understand this beast, we first have to understand its prison. The text establishes this brilliant, stark juxtaposition. On one side, you have absolute stillness and silence, just howling winds sweeping across these towering snow-covered cliffs. But then, on the other side, immense hidden potential. Buried beneath centuries of ice is the colossal body of an ancient stone dragon. It's the ultimate tension builder, right? A dead, silent wasteland hiding an unfathomable amount of dormant life right beneath the surface. And when we look specifically at the atmospheric direction from the text, it says, a dark fantasy cinematic sequence set in an endless frozen mountain range beneath a storm-filled twilight sky. Now, this isn't just background decoration. This specific combo of an endless frozen mountain range and a twilight sky instantly cloaks the entire sequence in mystery and myth. It makes us feel incredibly small, isolated, and honestly quite vulnerable before a single action even takes place. The slumbering colossus, anatomy of the beast. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the author describes the dragon not merely as an animal, but as actual geology. They use specific characteristics to anchor the beast right into the landscape. It's described as carved from weathered stone and covered in thick ice shimmering under a pale blue moonlight. These elements heavily emphasize its ancient dormant state. It literally appears as part of the mountain itself, something entirely forgotten by history. It hasn't just been sleeping, it has become part of the very fabric of the earth. To reveal this massive creature, the text basically plays the role of a master director, charting out a very distinct sequence of camera movements. It starts with slow aerial shots, soaring above the peaks, giving us that macro view of the desolate landscape. Then it gradually descends toward the dragon's immense face, really drawing our focus. Pushing in even closer, the camera creates intimacy, right as ancient runes begin to emerge. And finally, it pulls back for an epic wide shot. The text is literally guiding our eye from the vast, empty macro landscape down to the most intricate, intimate details of the awakening. Escalating the tension, a chain reaction. Let's move to the action and see how this builds, because suddenly the silence breaks. We can track the exact chronological ripple effect of the dragon's awakening on the surrounding environment. First, a deep rumble echoes. Then tiny cracks spread across the stone body, causing snow to cascade down like avalanches. We immediately see the visceral impact on wildlife. Birds erupt from caves and distant wolves flee in absolute terror. Finally, the very ground trembles beneath them. It's a perfectly structured escalation into full-blown environmental panic. The moment of awakening, stillness to chaos. Notice the dramatic visual shift described right here. Ancient glowing runes emerge between cracks, pulsing with warm, golden light as massive clouds swirl and lightning illuminates the majestic form. We are transitioning completely away from that cold, shimmering, pale blue moonlight we saw earlier. Now, it's this pulsing, warm, golden light. The storm overhead swirls with lightning, charging the whole atmosphere with electricity. All of this is building the ultimate anticipation for the exact moment those gigantic eyelids finally part. And then it happens. Quote, brilliant molten gold eyes ignite like miniature suns. The text doesn't just say the dragon wakes up. It gives us this incredibly vivid, intense imagery. These eyes don't just open, they ignite. They're literally like miniature suns, casting radiant, blinding light across an entire landscape that has been locked in dark twilight for centuries. It is an absolutely spectacular visual climax. But perhaps the most staggering detail is the scale of the power on display here. Because all of this sheer destruction, the melting of massive glaciers, the fracturing of rivers, it's all caused by just one single slow breath, taken for the first time in thousands of years. Just one breath from this colossus is enough to trigger a cataclysm. And this brilliantly illustrates the immediate aftermath of that single breath. The intense heat begins melting the glaciers, making these ancient, buried statues suddenly visible out of nowhere. Warm vapor rolls across the mountains like glowing mist. Frozen rivers violently fracture under the pressure, and distant peaks literally crumble to the ground. This awakening isn't just an animal stretching its legs. It is violently transforming the geography and uncovering layers of lost history hidden beneath the snow. Cinematic and technical directives. So the crucial point is, how do we take these words and turn them into a visual masterpiece? Well, the source text serves as a literal blueprint for a visual effects team. We get these precise render requirements, ultra-realistic details, volumetric lighting for those glowing runes and rolling mist, dramatic clouds, 8K resolution, and realistic physics for the crumbling peaks. These aren't just descriptive adjectives. They are precise technical prompts that elevate the story from text into a tangible, film-quality cinematic vision. Which leaves us with this final, lingering mystery from the source text. The sequence concludes with an epic wide shot showing the awakened stone dragons staring silently across the world, as if recognizing a forgotten destiny. So, what is the stone dragon's forgotten destiny? Why did it sleep for thousands of years? And what has finally triggered its return? The author leaves us right there on the precipice, standing in the rubble of shattered mountains, staring into the molten gold eyes of a myth reborn. It's an incredibly powerful way to end the sequence. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we visualize and break down more fascinating